going on with the TV evangelists? Dunedin and I, you're on the air, WPLP.
Hi, Bob. How are you?
Doing fine.
Good. I listen to you all the time.
Well, thank you. Your name and your church?
I'm Cantor Michael Weiser. I'm at Temple Ahavat Shalom.
Rabbi, welcome.
I have...
Or Cantor, as the case may be. I'm sorry.
Cantor.
Yes.
I have a feeling that it's really weird to me that anybody is surprised about what's going on with Baker. And I think that all of the, bar none.
Well, it's not just Baker. Swaggart has been charged with financial impropriety. Jerry Falwell, Pat Robertson, they've all been charged with it.
I think it's ludicrous that a Jerry Falwell can hold press conferences as if he's a head of state. I think it's outrageous that the things that Jimmy Swaggart says about Catholics, Jews, Buddhists, and everybody else is accepted at face value by millions of people. I think that the vast majority of the television evangelists are absolute frauds, absolute charlatans, and probably absolute thieves.
So why is it that so few members of the religious community will come out and say this?
Well, as a Jew, it's very hard for me to come out publicly and say this because I'm a tiny minority in a majority culture. If I said it, it would be, that Jew is saying something against the Christians. If the Christian ministers say it, a good number of their flocks are in favor of these guys. And so they have, unfortunately...
A good member of their flocks are in favor of all the other things they preach against, too.
Oh, yeah. They are. But the ministers are, in many cases, I think, looking out for their job. The Jewish clergy who don't speak out are probably assuming that whatever they said would be irrelevant on the issue. But the fact is that these fellows preach a certain standard, they preach perfection, and they're not perfect. And of course, the only thing that's perfect is their method of gathering money. They do a great job at that. They live like royalty, and they claim to be feeding the hungry and the starving. The impetus of their so-called ministries is to enrich themselves and to give themselves fame and notoriety. Hello?
I'm right here, sir.
I'm totally appalled. I've been thinking for years and years that somehow these fellows would fall and that they would suffer a hard fall because what they're doing is hurting people.
No, but what the religious community has done is in essence hurt itself by remaining silent for all of these years.
Mr. Lassiter, you're a voice in the dark. It needs to be said. The religious community has acquiesced over and over and over again, partly out of fear, partly out of economic reasons, partly out of not knowing what to do, and partly just out of intimidation, I think. When the big tent show comes to town, and the ministers are approached by the advance men to get their congregations out there and to get the combined choirs out there, they say, gee, we better do it, we'll look bad. And really what they ought to be doing is saying the truth, that these fellows are hurting the cause of religion of all sorts, I think, and hurting the cause of morality. And, what bothers me the most?
What's that, sir?
I know for a fact that some of these large evangelical organizations do their heaviest fundraising on the last week of the month, several days before the Social Security checks come out.
Mm-hmm. They have a cantor and one United Methodist minister. We'll wait. It's really interesting when I meet men of the cloth. They'll sometimes squeal in delight saying, boy, I heard that show you did, and going after all those crazy evangelists. Boy, that was really great, Bob. Uh-huh. Wouldn't think that so many of them would be busy on a Monday night on next Sunday's sermon, would you, that they couldn't call? Perhaps the cantor hit the nail right on the head. They're afraid. Afraid to speak the truth. How easy it is to stand in the pulpit and rail against fornicators. Especially when you're talking to a bunch of dried-up old ladies and impotent old men. About the only thing I can think of at this point in the program is that old saying must be true. You know, the one about birds of a feather?
To join in the conversation, the number to call in Hillsborough County is 224-0057. In Pinellas County, 393-00.
.9:52 the time. We still have 8 minutes left in this hour as we breathlessly await members of the clergy to speak out against the television evangelists. It's been a very quiet, lonely hour. One rabbi, one cantor, one United Methodist minister. Seems to me that we might reconsider. We just might reconsider calling these men community leaders. Since apparently the only thing they'll speak out against is masturbation. Silence is deafening, isn't it? Oh, my goodness, there's another one. St. Petersburg, you're on there at WPLP.
Hi, it's Reverend Joseph Cormier. I'm not currently in the active public ministry, but I am an ordained priest, not in the Roman Catholic order, though.
Well, hi there, Father. Which order are you in?
Well, I'm inactive, but a member of the Holy Order of Man.
Okay.
I didn't catch much of your program. I just caught little bits and pieces as I was going to the grocery store. So you'll have to give me a lead or ask me a question or something, and I'll go from there.
Well, just very simply, I was very curious tonight as to why the members of the clergy are so remarkably silent when it comes to denouncing their own.
Well, as I'm sure you already know, but I will give my views. And most people are not willing to throw stones in glass houses, and most of those people are standing in glass houses. And
well, it must be. It must be that.
Yeah. I'm probably more in agreement with you than most ministers or priests. So, I mean, you may not have an argument with me.
Well, yeah, I'm not looking to argue. I'm just very, very curious as to why the religious community has remained silent from the very beginning, when it was painfully obvious from the very beginning that these were charlatans and nothing but charlatans in the electronic ministry.
Well, the first reason is, I think, is the glass house idea, and the second one is for those who are maybe on the other side to some degree, figure that it will show most of what it is on its own merits without having to risk being accused of tearing down somebody else's religious organization just because it's a competing organization. So, I mean, I'm sure there's some who are silent or not so vocal merits without having to risk being accused of tearing down somebody else's religious organization just because it's a competing organization. So, I mean, I'm sure there's some who are silent or not so vocal for better reasons, as well as for the more corrupt reasons.
Father, I thank you.
Okay.
Tampa, you're on air, WPLD.
Hi.
Hi.
This is Paul Blake. I'm with the Church of God. The office is on Nebraska Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
I do the evangelism work for Southern Florida as
You're good, bud.
directing some work that we do, building new churches, etc.
Well, welcome, Reverend.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Well, a couple of things. I had to work till 9:30 tonight in the office, so I don't usually get to listen to the radio. And I just wondered if a lot of our ministers may be doing other things. Hopefully, they're not afraid to speak out on the issue. I've been following this, what we might want to call it, from PTL and other parts of the globe, ever since it hit the airway to PTL.
Well, it's not just PTL, it's clear across the board. There are obvious abuses in virtually all of the TV ministries.
Well, I am not a TV watcher, far as you know. And our latest church evangel, which is our church paper, has an editorial in it that I'd be glad to send you, which kind of clarifies our position.
I'd be delighted to see that. I really and truly would.
If someone give me an address, I'll mail you a copy of that.
I'll give it to you right now if you have a pencil.
Okay, let me see here. I'm just jumped out of my car and want to catch you before 10 o'clock. I know you're fixing to leave me here. But I'm aware of many things, that I don't like. I support our own denomination radio broadcast. We do not have a television ministry. We have a radio broadcast. You give me an address, I'll mail you that editorial.
It is Post Office Box 48579.
4579, okay.
St. Petersburg. Zip code 33743.
Okay, and send it to you directly?
Please.
And your name again?
Bob Lassiter.
See, I don't even know your name. I'm sorry. I've been in the city in 8 months.
Well, I thank you for your call tonight, Reverend.
Take care.
Take care. We'll open it up to all of you after the news at 10 o'clock from the CBS Radio Network. After the hour of 10 o'clock, Monday night, April 27th, 1987. We'll open it up to everybody now. Don't have to be ordained. It was quite an interesting hour. 45 minutes of arm twisting, and we got a cantor, a rabbi, an unemployed priest, and 2 ministers. I sure do hope you were impressed with that, and I sure do hope all the rest of you members of the clergy, members of the religious community, are real proud of yourselves for your silence. I mean, we're not talking here about a guy who had a fling with a secretary 7 years ago in a motel room. We're not even talking here about a guy who hired prostitutes or may have had a bisexual relationship. That's irrelevant. That's not the issue, although that seems to be what has caught the nation's attention. The real issue here is that these people have been bilking unsuspecting people for years. They have been living lavishly, drawing outrageous salaries, perks beyond belief, everything $2 million houses to jet airplanes. All the contributions of people who can ill afford it. Supposedly named spreading the gospel, saving souls. The other night on Nightline, when Koppel grilled Jimmy Swart about his income. Geez, I'm not taking in the kind of money they're taking. I mean, my family and I are only taking about $250,000.
$250,000 from pennies sent by little old ladies and little old men and children. That's a disgrace. That's an outrage. He employs 1,500 people to put together a television show that is watched by people who don't need it. And that's where the rest of the money goes. Oh, sure, a pittance here for Haiti. Pittance there for Africa. But when you take into consideration the amount of money that these people generate, the amount of money that they spend in so-called ministries is nothing. And that is the disgrace. That is the real issue. Or a Jim Bakker who stands there hawking timeshare condominiums that don't exist. Or other television who are doing nothing more than sending out a right-wing political message that is cloaked in the gospel. This is outrageous and solicit money again from little old ladies and little old men and children to do so. And the religious community has remained silent, though this has been going on for years and years and years. And now the whole damn thing's blowing up in your face, and you deserve it. You deserve every last ounce of agony and mishap that comes out of this. Because you could have stopped it. You could have spoken out against it. And you didn't. You looked the other way because they were men of the cloth, and birds of a feather flock together. How quick the clergy is to denounce lay people for their indiscretions, for their sins, for their immorality, for their thievery. But not a word if it's a clergyman. Not a word. Silence if it's a clergyman, if it's a fellow minister. Look at the likes again of a Jimmy Swaggart who stands there on national television denouncing one of the world's major denominations in the most virulent terms. And everybody else remains silent. All the Episcopalians, all the Lutherans, all the Methodists. Everybody else is silent. Everybody else is silent as another clown raises $10 million to build a water slide to bring souls to Jesus, when there is so much work to be done. $10 million so that upper middle class kids can go and ride on a water slide to win souls for Jesus. When there are people starving, when there are people who can't pay their electric bills, when there are people who can't pay their rent, when there are people who don't have jobs or shoes, and the religious community remains silent. The religious community remains silent when an old fool goes up into his prayer tower to fast because Jesus told him he had to raise $8 million to keep his ego-fed hospital open. Oh, yeah, I know they were for medical scholarships. Medical scholarships for his college that would have gone under. All the religious community remains silent as he graphically described his wrestling match with the devil and how he had to call his wife in to help get the devil's hands out from around his neck. All the religious community remained silent when this old fool talked of the 900-foot Jesus that came to him. All of the religious community remained silent when the likes of Tony Alamo viciously attacked the Pope. All remained silent. But Boy, you guys can give a hell of a speech of a kid masturbating, can't you? You guys can give a hell of a speech about a fornicator. But you just can't find anything in your little hearts to give a hell of a speech about your own kind, who are thieves and charlatans, and a disgrace. A disgrace not only to the religious community, but a disgrace to humanity. Men who come before you in $1,000 suits wearing $5,000 and $6,000 wristwatches, who drove to the service in their $40,000 or $50,000, $60,000 or $70,000 or $80,000 car, who will go home to their $2 million home after the service and stand there and, with tears in their eyes, beg for $15. And shamelessly tell people that it's for the work of Jesus. You all remain silent. Well, I guess in some respects I'm kind of glad that you didn't come forward in the last hour, because now we know for a fact who it is that you stand with. Now we know for a fact who it is that you support. Don't we? Largo, you're on the air, WPLP.
Hey, Bob, Tom Aiken here, Largo Church of Christ.
Good evening, Reverend.
Pardon?
Good evening, Reverend.
Well, we don't call ourselves Reverend in the Church of Christ, but that's all right. I've been preaching now for 43 years. I have never yet failed to bring to the attention of the congregation the fallacy of radio evangelists and TV evangelists who make a plea and beg for money. I feel like there's a misconception or misuse of the religious freedoms as guaranteed by the Constitution, where these people can proselyte, or whatever you want to call it, siphon out of the pockets of people who are superstitious and ever to enrich their own coffers and themselves, and never really minister to the needs of people. They're only ministering to their own needs, and they're agents of the devil. And I say this with all love for the souls of mankind. I say this very, very sincerely, that among the ministry of the people of the world, they're just as bad, and just as many people as weak as they get to be. And that's an indictment, and I'm sure it is. But we need to pray for people that their lives will straighten up and their interest will not be for self, but to serve others. And I feel this way about Falwell, and there's no need even naming the names. When they come on and say, send me your money, that's what I'm talking about. Because we do this work through the church in the local community, and we find the hungry, we feed them in the local community. When they need ministering to in the local community, that's where we do it. And that's where it should be done. And to say that we just make a broadcast plea and get in millions and millions of dollars tax-free, I think that the government should re-rate the program, and only a church building would be the exemption from taxes. Every other dime that come in has to be accounted for. Now, that's what I preach, and that's the way we are.
Well, you're indeed a rare, rare man.
I realize that. But I'm still going to do that. I may not have many more years, but as long as I live, that's what I'm going to preach. And just a little passage, and I know that without matter of debate, but I believe that the Bible is the Word of God. And in the book of Revelation, in the 21st chapter, in verse 8, he teaches that no liar, no whoremonger, no envious or covetous person shall enter the kingdom of heaven. And these people are talking about heaven, and they're living these debauchery lives before all the world. And they know if they are honest with themselves, they have no more chance to go to heaven than ice cube has in torment.
Well, I'm afraid that too many of them haven't spent an awful lot of time with the gospel, but have spent an awful lot of time in learning how to raise funds.
Well, they are highly educated. There's no doubt about that. They've manipulated or received the ability to manipulate people. The fellow in Sarasota who gave the contribution to Oral Roberts, he made a contribution to a church in Sarasota down there and became a member of it. And I know personally about this matter, and all he wanted was to purchase a way to get tax-free income. He didn't give anything. We as people, citizens of this country, because it was allowed a write-off on taxes. We paid the bill. He didn't pay any of it.
That's correct.
That is absolutely correct, and it's wrong. It shouldn't be that way.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
The phone numbers that put you on the air at WPLP.
10:21 the time. Of course, the amazing thing is the number of calls coming in off the air from supporters of the likes of Jim Bakker and the vile obscenities that flow from their mouths into the ear of my producer. No wonder they're not in the least bit concerned with supporting a whoremonger. Son Eden, you're on the air at WPLP.
Hello, Bob.
Hi.
I come from a religious family. My father is a minister. My stepmother is a minister. My brother is a minister.
Sounds like a pretty religious family to me.
Yeah, my little sister is a director of Christian education. My sister is an elder. But at the same time, the thing...
Or Orange County. Can you imagine how many millions of people have been led by these turkeys, by these boats?
People really believe this is real. I cannot understand this. You know, and
It's a very good analogy with the Saturday morning wrestling.
But the deal is that, you know, you can show people light, but if they close their eyes and cover them, you know, they're never going to see. And I'm sitting here and I'm telling you, I am not a person who, I consider myself to be a spiritual person and to be very interested and concerned in developing my own spirituality and helping others do that. But I am a person who does not even like the church. Okay, but I will say that there's a certain logic or a certain futility in trying to enlighten people who don't want to see.
Thank you, my young friend.
Okay.
Be good.
Bye.
One line open. It's in Pinellas, Tampa. You're on the air, WPLP.
Yes, Bob. This is Duke from Tampa, and I'm a pagan. And I'd like to just discuss with you the church hierarchy. First of all, I'd like to state that that not all fundamentalists or people who preach the Bible are corrupt. I believe the main reason that clergymen do not want to speak with you tonight is that, in fact, they are all charlatans. In the church hierarchy, it doesn't matter who is holier than another. I think it solely depends on how much contributions, quote unquote, they can collect.
You may well be right. You may well be right. I think it's a travesty and a... Sunday collection, and not consider what it is that they're really sent there to do, that they have these massive buildings, the massive expense that goes along with those buildings. They put themselves in a corner, and maybe it's time for them to take themselves out of that corner.
Mm-hmm. All right. I'd also like to discuss or talk about the suckers who are blinded by faith, like that fast person who you talk to. They're misguided by people of the cloth who does take advantage of them.
Some do. Probably for the most part, they don't.
All of them do, but some do, and they take advantage of these blind people. And their empty promises of heaven depends on how deep those blind people can dig in their pockets.
Thank you.
Okay.
A line open in each county: Hillsborough 224-0057, Pinellas 393-0057, Gulfport. Your turn at WPLP. You got to turn the radio down.
Lee, would you turn the radio down, please?
Turn that radio
There's
down.
a lot of people speaking their minds out there.
There are a lot of people in Tampa tonight.
Oh, I'm not so sure about that.
They seem talk about what.
But I don't know what I am.
The discussion tonight is why the clergy have.
Why do the clergy be on my tape?
I realize that.
I
But I
put in
just wanted
another
to
tape.
express my feelings on
Express.
the people that were talking about the Bible in your conversation.
Well, ma'am,
Well, go ahead.
They want to express everything
Express
that
yourself.
God
Now
said,
express
but
it.
they don't understand what it means. And I think they need to take it
You
to
do, though.
heart.
You understand.
Of course I do.
I see.
It's,
Nobody else but you.
oh, no, I didn't say that.
Well, nobody else that's called this program tonight but you.
understand.
Well, the people that I've been listening to on your radio station
Have you heard what
think
Lassiter
they
had
know
to say
everything
today?
about the way to live and how to tell other people to live, but they don't take into heart what real life is all about. In real life,
Well, you seem to be very good at talking in circles. Do you think you could be a little bit more specific?
well, I think that more people need to be stronger. They need to talk about health, happiness,
Yes.
prosperity to every person you meet,
And ignore the obvious.
to make all your friends feel that there's something in them,
Yes.
to look at the
And
sunny
speed
side of
bumps
everything,
at a
Right, look at the
very
sunny side of everything and ignore these charlatans who are ripping people off left and right.
bad rate.
make your optimism come true.
And there's a
Don't
concert
be
here.
so pessimistic.
That's right.
You think only of the best, and work only for the best, and expect only the
Oh, you sound to me like the very kind of person Jim Bakker counts on.
Wonder
Jim
what
Bakker is
concert
a
is here.
rumor.
Oh,
While we're discussing Jim Bakker, you're building the story on rumors.
no, I'm building the story on what Jim Bakker has already admitted to. So I don't give a damn about the adultery. I don't give a damn about the fornication. I couldn't care less about any of the sexual charges. They're totally irrelevant to me. No skin off my nose whatsoever. But when a man's out there selling condominiums that he doesn't have to sell, when a man's out there fleecing the public and living an extravagant lifestyle, that upsets me a little bit, and it should upset an awful lot of other
Hear the
people. It should
concert?
upset people in the... Like I said, you're the very kind of person Jim counts
You're
on.
in the
And they expect
very
only the
concert
best.
that
And they're
there ever was.
enthusiastic about the
Not
success
only
of
that,
others, as you are about your
ran out
own.
of room.
Yeah,
Wait.
except the difference is you
Wait
see
a
my
minute.
success, the money that is in my pocket
this?
tonight, doesn't come from
So
lying to
fucked
people
up.
and having them send me their hard-earned money because I'm sitting here lying to them.
Well, that's when you have to forget the mistakes of
There
the past
is
and
no
press on
place
to
for
the greater
fear
achievements
there.
of the future.
Oh, that really sounds good. How much do you send a month?
Well, you should wear a cheerful.
How much do you send a month?
How
You should wear a
How much
cheerful
do you send a
all
month?
the time. And
How
get
much do you send a month? You answer the question or you're gone. How much do you send a month?
You.
How much do I send a month?
Yeah, I believe that's the question.
much money?
As according to supporting Jim Bakker,
Or any of the TV evangelists.
a TV evangelist? I feel that man is on his own to it.
I said you'd be gone if you didn't answer the
You're
question.
gone.
Join in the conversation. The number to call in Hillsborough County is 224
Get down in that Miami town. Your man. Thank you, Bob.
Listen, I wanted to comment on these evangelists, Jim Bakker and all the rest of them. You know, I'm glad that, you know, I consider I'm a Catholic and I consider myself a human-loving person, but I'm glad he's going through the pain and suffering he's going through now.
Well, if anybody deserves it, it surely is Baker.
Yeah, exactly, because he's taken a lot of people that are lonely and don't have anywhere else to turn to but the TV, and he's taken them for everything they've got.
Well, of course, virtually everybody else in the religious community is squirming over this, too, and they deserve it as well because they have allowed Baker to go on for years in this fashion when it was well known what he was up to.
Exactly. And the last caller said that we should press on the greater things. Well, what are we going to have? More evangelists opening up bigger and better amusement parks? Come on, funny today. Earlier on the radio, I don't know on this show or not,
Shut up,
had mentioned that it was free to make a pledge on PLT Club or whatever it's called, but it costs 50 cents to get on the prayer line. And it's just Jim Bakker and his wife and that whole goody outfit out there just fleecing poor lonely people the money that they've spent their life saving. It just makes me sick.
It should make anybody sick, and what should really make you sick is that prayer line is nothing more than a way to gather names so that they can then send you, inundate you with mail begging for funds.
Right. I just hope that he's suffering, because I know a lot of other people are suffering. They don't even know it.
I remember once, just for the fun of it, I called the 700 Club with an incredible story of pain and suffering and sorrow. And of course, they wanted my name and address, and just for the fun of it, I gave them my actual name and address.
Well, thank you, Bob. I enjoy your show, and keep the good work.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
By the way, I should also hasten to point out that after a year of sending me notices for money, they stopped communicating with me altogether, and I never got any back. St. Petersburg, you're on the air, WPLD.
Yeah, Bob, how you doing tonight?
Fine, thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment. I think all these people that are out there sending their money in, these people are going to be electing our presidential candidate, Pat Robertson, into the office. And I think if we go to that far of an extreme right, we'll be far enough left to be into another Iran-type situation. You follow what I'm saying?
I follow what you're saying, that Pat Robertson does not stand a chance. He'll have a hard enough time getting the nomination, but he certainly just doesn't stand a chance of being elected president.
No, but
there aren't that many of them.
But I think the church is getting too much power into the face of what the regular people have to do.
Well, obviously, and it's despicable that so many people, and nobody does it better than Robertson, are cloaking their right-wing politics in the gospel. And that's despicable. It is also despicable that he hides behind the election laws in this country to use that television program, to use those so-called religious contributions to push his political message. There again is another thing that has been going on for years that the religious community in this country will not speak out against.
Well, I believe there's a separation between church and state. It ought to stay that way. I don't think anybody, I don't think a preacher should be able to go in there and take off. And, the way they have it is they don't like to rock and roll, and they condone this and condemn that. I mean, who are they to say to what the actual moral majority have, to say this?
Well, I have no problem with the preacher standing in his pulpit saying he doesn't like rock and roll. I have no problem with that whatsoever. I think he's a goon, but that's neither here nor there. It's certainly his right to do so. However, when he uses the public airwaves and uses the guise of religion to solicit money to push his political ideas, then we have a real problem. At least insofar as I'm concerned.
One verse.
All right, brother, thank you.
Thank you. Tampa, you're on the air, WPLD.
Mr. Lassiter, how are you? I like you.
Fine.
I'm about a third-time caller.
I like
Hey, you're going to be a lot
the world can't, these people that are giving their money see through it.
Well, there's a relatively...
I can see through it, and it's not costing me anything.
Well, there's a relatively simple answer. It may be simple that it's simple-minded, but the first thing that comes to my mind is you and I are afraid of dying.
listen at base.
Get my drift.
Well, I sort of see what you're talking about.
You and I aren't worried about going to heaven. And since we're not worried about going to heaven, we're not consumed with trying to buy our way in. Or at least buy favor.
I like that Lassiter.
I have a couple things to say about the Reverend Swaggart. He's written a letter, a pamphlet, which I know you're familiar with it because you've mentioned it a couple of times. I don't know you've mentioned by title, but the name of it is an open letter to my Catholic friends.
Mm-hmm.
Part 1 and Part 2, I might add. In this, I'm a member of the Catholic League for Religious and Civil Rights here in the Tampa area, and we have been trying to fight these born-again efforts at smearing the Catholic Church. They will try every time they get the chance. And presently, there's a man in Tampa who's about 95% finished with a response to Reverend Swaggart, but Mr. Swaggart won't answer
of his phone calls or any of his mail. You can walk into any of these born-again Christian bookstores, and when I say any, I mean any, because we've canvassed them, and we have found that they all carry anti-Catholic literature.
Well, most of them carry the Tony Alamo literature, which says the Pope is a homosexual and a communist.
That's right. And well, the thing that puzzles
Any Pope, by the way.
The thing that puzzles me the most is why in the world, you know, I'm going to pose another question. Where have the Protestant clergymen been when this stuff has been put out on all these Christian book racks?
Precisely, and especially those who speak of an ecumenical movement, a joining of the churches, because after all, there's only one God. Those men in particular, those who really push the ecumenical movement, are hypocrites. And frankly, the word hypocrite is too good for them because they do not speak out against this. They just close their eyes to it.
Here's some words by Jimmy Swaggart. Pope John Paul II and Mother Teresa will be damned to hell if they are not born again. That's Reverend Swaggart speaking. Mm-hmm. Now, you know, he lives in a mansion.
$2 million house.
Right. And Tammy Bakker has gold-plated bathroom fixtures, and
they have at least 3 lavish homes.
Frances Swaggart, Jimmy Swaggart's wife, has an $1,800 antique desk. But Mother Teresa, who sleeps on a cot and rescues babies out of dumpsters, is going to hell.
Yeah.
Very sensible, isn't it?
Right.
Before I hang up, there are 2 things I want to say. Let me remind you of Pope John Paul's admonitions, in fact, his order for no nun no priest and no nun can hold any kind of political office.
Yes, it's one I wish he would also stick to himself in terms of his political rhetoric, but that's neither here nor there.
Well, he can't because he is head of state. He is the head of state. You have to keep that in mind. Number 2 is that there are only 2 things that all Protestant denominations have in common. There are only 2 things that they have in common, and that is belief in a God of some sort and their mutual dislike of the Catholic and Jewish religion.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Clearwater, your turn at WPLB.
And it's only pay our light bill. But you don't never hear where they've volunteered and sent a nursing home, a children's home, or a fireplace for...
Or at least not in proportion to the amount of funds that they generate.
Very neat.
At least not in proportion to the amount of funds that they generate.
That's right.
I'm very sorry, but I'm fresh out of time for this evening.
Okay.
I know you waited a long time, and I did my best to let you get your piece.
That's all right.
Thank you.
See?
I would certainly hope that in the future the religious community has learned its lesson from this, and the next time a charlatan comes along, they won't be so silent. Behave yourselves.